What's up, everybody? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the New Orleans Pelicans. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it and subscribe to the channel as well for more content just like this every single day. With those things said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this yesterday, but I decided to give it a day to kind of collect my thoughts. That's why there was no video yesterday. Because this is kind of just a very weird situation in New Orleans, and a situation where I really felt like I needed to take some time and figure out how I felt, because I've gone back and forth on this. I've wanted to talk about the Pelicans for a month or two, and now it's finally time. So primarily, let's deal first with the news here. What has instigated this particular video? Well, that is the fact that Zion Williamson still has not played this season, and he recently suffered a setback in his injury rehabilitation from surgery on his foot. And this is concerning for a variety of different reasons. The first of which being there are a lot of rumors and pictures and things like that going around that Zion is not in the best shape at the moment, which is not certainly going to help if that is the case. Certainly not going to help his recovery from a foot injury, but it's also kind of this cycle where it's hard for him to get in shape if he can't be active. And obviously, if he's overweight, it makes it difficult for him to rehab his foot injury, but also if his foot is hurt, it makes it difficult for him to deal with his weight if that is an issue for him. So it's just kind of this cycle that goes round and round and round and round, where Zion really just can't solve any of those issues. And also, this brings up this concept for New Orleans about what to do about Zion's extension. This is something that we've talked about for a year, and his desire to want to sign an extension with New Orleans, his potential unhappiness in New Orleans, and the possibility that he might be the first guy to leave his incumbent team as a successful player on a rookie contract. And at this point, like, what do you even do if you're New Orleans when it comes to a Zion extension? Because weirdly, he still has a ton of leverage from a contract negotiation standpoint. I mean, even with him being hurt and having some of these issues, last year when he played, he was devastating. He was one of the best scorers in the league. He was an incredible offensive player and showcased everything that made him the first overall pick in the first place. And at the end of the day, it's still New Orleans. It's still a situation that not a lot of players are going to want to be in. And if they have the opportunity to re-sign Zion to an extension, they're going to jump at that opportunity. And so he still has leverage. Now, you'd imagine, I mean, it would have to be really difficult to sign this guy to a max contract extension when he's played one season and he's dealing with this foot injury stuff. But at the same time, like, he can probably ask for it because New Orleans is so desperate to keep him. What you can probably do is give him a max. However, it can be similar to the Embiid max that he got initially from Philadelphia, where there's all these different clauses and incentives in terms of games played and things like that, where if the guy just doesn't play, then you're not actually paying him a max contract. So that covers the team in case the Zion injury stuff continues, but it also allows Zion to get compensated fully if he does return from this injury and become the player, once again, that we all saw last year that was awesome. And that kind of leads us into a larger roster construction question and scenario with New Orleans, because not only is Zion not healthy, not only are there potentially some issues with his weight, not only are they trying to figure out what to do with an extension for him, but the team around him is not very good either. And they're looking at a situation between Jonas Valanciunas and Josh Hart and Devontae Graham and Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. If they do sign him to an extension, they're looking at a situation where they're close to the luxury tax as one of the worst teams in the league. Now, granted, they've been one of the worst teams in the league this year without Zion and with Ingram missing games and things like that. But just the overall instability of the situation is certainly concerning, and there's no real positive avenue here. There's nothing you can point to and say, well, if they do this, then they'll be fine. Because realistically, there's three main assets here in New Orleans. It's Zion, for whatever that's worth, given his situation right now. It's Brandon Ingram, who we don't know if he's a winning player, but he's obviously talented as a scorer. And then it's their draft pick this year, which could be laying in the top 5. And this is a very, very talented class, specifically at the very top, with some guys that are an interesting fit there in New Orleans. And so your two options are, you build around those three guys. You cross your fingers and you hope that Zion's healthy, that Ingram is a winning player, and that you get a good pick, and you build around those three guys, or you move one or more of them in order to build around Ingram, or in order to build around Zion, or to build around the guy that you draft in this upcoming draft. The problem is, if you're moving Ingram, if you're moving Zion, if you're moving this top pick, you're trying to get a star. You're trying to get a guy in return that dramatically raises your ceiling. It's a veteran that is a multiple-time All-Star, All-NBA caliber guy. And not only are not many of those guys available, but none of them are going to want to come to New Orleans. And players have mastered this ability to, really steer where they want to go, even if they're not impending free agents. They'll just refuse to play for a team. And I would imagine that, like Ben Simmons, or we know Damian Lillard's not going to be moved, but in a scenario in which he would be, Bradley Beal, none of those guys are going to want to play in New Orleans. And that's the core of the issue here, is even if Zion was healthy and Ingram was playing really well and the team was like a 500 basketball team, the bottom line is this is a dysfunctional franchise and a dysfunctional organization on the level of Sacramento for the last decade plus, on the level of what the Knicks used to be a handful of years ago. There's dysfunction, there's disorder, there's going to be changes in the front office soon. There might be another change in the head coach, which would be if they did make a move, their fourth in 4 years. There's, dysfunction and disorganization when it comes to where the team is going to be playing their basketball games and the possibility of a relocation. And that's really the core of the issue here, is not only do they just have to cross their fingers at this point from a roster construction standpoint and hope that Zion's healthy and hope that these other couple of assets on the roster are guys that are going to be able to help them in the long term, but they're just not doing the correct things. And to think about where they were a couple of years ago when they got Zion and having Ingram, having just made the AD trade and all these assets, and where they are now, they've made absolutely no progress. And in certain, aspects have gone backwards, specifically from a health standpoint for Zion. And I think at the time, myself and a lot of other people, we just really overvalued some of these future assets that they got in exchange for Drew Holiday and in exchange for Anthony Davis, because they let Lonzo go. Josh Hart's been fine, but nothing spectacular. And then they've got these future picks, and the Lakers picks might end up being something. The Lakers are a 500 basketball team right now, and so they have their pick this year. I think they have a swap for next year. There's opportunities for New Orleans to get value out of those Lakers picks into the future, but they've got these Bucks picks, and as long as Giannis is healthy, those aren't going to be anything. And you're looking at, late 20s, mid 20s picks in exchange, in addition to Brandon Ingram in exchange for Anthony Davis. And granted, AD kind of always had to go to LA. That was just the way the situation developed. But specifically to the way that we valued this team a couple of years ago as possibly the brightest future in the league, I think we really overvalued how important the draft picks were to that. And if guys like Zion and Brandon Ingram didn't develop and didn't stay healthy, that future never really existed in the first place. And so ultimately, this is going to be a long-term thing for New Orleans. It's not going to be a situation where they're suddenly going to be really good overnight. They're going to need Zion to get healthy. They're going to need to nail the drafts, and they're going to need to make some moves to this roster. This can't be the finished product. It's going to be one of the worst teams in the league. And then, when Zion comes back, they're still best case a 500 basketball team. Now, the one positive here is they do have those future picks. Even if they're in the 20s, they are still assets. They are still first round picks that you can use in a trade. And apart from Zion and Ingram, who we already kind of talked about the difficulty with moving those guys, they have a couple of other players on this roster that contractually and ability-wise are pretty easy to move. Devontae Graham's a decent player making 10 a year. Josh Hart, same thing. JV, who they signed to an extension, similar situation where he's a valuable veteran guy on a movable contract. And so there will be options here. It's just difficult to imagine a scenario in which a star is happy in New Orleans unless it's someone that they draft, unless that star is Zion, unless that star is Brandon Ingram or whoever they draft. It's going to have to be a homegrown thing here for New Orleans. And quite frankly, to this point, they have shown nothing. There's no evidence to point us in the direction that is going to be a positive thing for this franchise. And so ultimately, the Zion thing is unfortunate. And especially after seeing him play so well last year, I want him to be healthy, and I want New Orleans to be good, and I want the situation to work out there because it would be fun to have a good basketball team in New Orleans. But the bottom line is, his injury recovery and the issues with that are kind of just emblematic of the things that are wrong with this franchise, where there just doesn't appear to be a lot of organization. There doesn't appear to be a lot of people on the same page. And when that happens, unfortunately, just bad things tend to happen to NBA franchises. And New Orleans is just kind of stuck in that vortex right now. They've kind of been there for a while with some of the injury issues with AD and things like that. So at the end of the day, this sucks. I want New Orleans to have some hope, and I want the franchise to stay there. But ultimately, if Zion doesn't get healthy and they can't figure out the rest of the roster, we're probably looking at relocation, and Ingram and Zion probably not being a part of the long-term future of this team and just ending up somewhere else as a result of a trade as they potentially reset once again in a year, 2, 3 years, because they were never able to make any progress with this Ingram, Zion plus picks era. And at a certain point, you just kind of have to hit the reset button. Otherwise, you're spending $150 million a year in payroll on a team that's not even a 500 basketball team. So they're unfortunately kind of hopeless at this point. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the box on screen as well. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Monday and a great start to your week, and I will see you all next time.